Hey guys, I'm Rick, creator of Revelations Skirmish, which is a destructive combined arms miniatures game set in the Revelations universe. Today we're going to be building one of the giant Juggernaut WarMechs for the Faust Union. This model, even after months of it being in development and seeing it in my display cabinet, the ones that I have like painted up, still gets me excited because it is so imposing of a model on the battlefield and it just looks badass. So this particular kit, if you were to buy this from us, we've kind of just labeled this one the standing pose. Code name for behind the scenes is the Chad, because it's just standing there like, yeah, come on, I'm just waiting for you to do something kind of thing. It's just standing there. It's awesome. But if you were to buy this kit or print it yourself, you're going to find that it's going to have 18 different parts, as well as require a 75mm base. As always, the notches are for the rear arc. So we're gonna set that aside because this is a big boy and we're gonna need some room to be able to put him together. Now, let's go ahead and start first with the lower portion of the mech, the legs and the pelvis. The pelvis, to kind of point this out to make sure that you have this in the correct direction, is with this upside down U shape. That is the front. And likewise on the back, you'll notice that there's these flaps. There's 3 different flaps. They have like a hinge at the top. That is the rear of the pelvis, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and grab some Zap-A-Gap glue. Lots of other super glues work. This is just the brand that I prefer. Put a small bead on there. And I've gone ahead and made sure that I'm happy with the level of the legs, because when it comes time to mount him to the base, I don't really want to be taking that apart and doing all kinds of extra work and everything. So we're going to go ahead and have this. We're just going to kind of just aim it straight ahead, trying to make sure that it's going to be level when it's done. Go ahead and put a little bit of glue on this other one, other leg. Now to attach the other leg, I'm going to hold it so that it's basically level with the other leg, so that way it'll hold its own weight. That way I know that I've assembled it correctly. If it can stand on its own, I feel pretty good about where we are right now. So while that is curing the rest of the way, we're going to set that aside, and we're going to go ahead and start working on assembling the Toad's Fall rotary cannon. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and put in the rotary weapons, the barrel assemblies. Doesn't really matter what order you go in, but you're going to be just dropping them down in there. And actually, you know what? I'm going to put a little bit of extra glue because there's a little bit of extra room around it, and I just want to be sure that it's going to hold and not end up coming off later. And it'll probably be a good idea to kind of be looking at this straight on. This is not proper gun safety, but with a miniature, I don't have to really worry about harming myself. But that way I can kind of make sure that all of the rotary clusters are going to end up being aimed in the same direction. I wouldn't want one to be kind of cockeyed and kind of aiming outward, and then you have, you know, this really awesome looking weapon and it's it's kind of angled awkwardly. There's the first one. Put that glue around the base. Oh, and then it fell. Kind of hold these up together so they're aiming in the right direction. What'll happen is if you put too much glue, like I did, then it'll end up being too wet and it won't dry fast enough for you to kind of move on. So you just got to kind of be patient and just hold it in place for a little bit, and then it'll dry and you won't be upset with yourself later for making a mistake. And now with all 3 of them glued in place, we're going to go ahead and move on to the shield for the rotary cannon. Now on the back of the shield, there are 3 holes to correspond and match up to the 3 pegs here on the bracing arms. So we'll just put a tiny bit, we don't want to over glue this part, tiny bit on those. Now you could also paint this separately. I myself assembled the Toad's Fall cannon all at once and then just paint it that way. But I could see how you'd want to paint the shield separately and then assemble it later, so that way you can control everything. You just line it up with the holes and the pegs, pop it on, Toad's Fall cannon is all done, just like that. So we'll also go ahead and set that one aside for the moment so that it can fully dry. So when assembling the torso, you'll find that the torso is all just one piece. You don't have to worry about anything there, but the arms are going to be, depending on the type of pose that you pick for the Juggernaut, are going to come in a couple of different parts. So we're going to go ahead and kind of figure out roughly what we want the shoulders to look like, and then you can either decide to glue the arms together first, then attach them to the shoulders, or then attach them to the shoulder socket, I should say, or you can go ahead and do the shoulders first, then work downwards for the rest of the arm. I think I'm going to go ahead and attach the arms first. And in order to know basically which arm is going to be the left or the right, because it could get confusing when you print these and you got them in the kit or everything, these peg holes on the outside of the arm are going to be for the arm shields. The arm shields are going to go in horizontally to the arm. So that way we know, the minute, with the forearm, they're going to be horizontal. So I know that if the peg hole is on the left side of the arm, if I'm looking at it this way, this is going to be the left arm. And likewise, if it's on the right side, that is the right arm, okay? So that way I can know that when I'm assembling them, I don't want to accidentally glue the right arm pointed inward, because now that it will be my left arm, the shield will be on the inside, and that's going to be a big mistake. So I want to make sure I know where these pegs are so that if I'm assembling the arms, I'm putting the right arm, or the correct arm I should say, to make it easier so there's no confusion, into the shoulders the way that I want them to be, so that way everything will be as I intend it to be and not in some other orientation. So let's go ahead and do the left arm first. So we need one of the shoulders. Now for this standing pose Juggernaut, there is no difference between the shoulders. You'll notice that they're mirrored. They both have the shoulder joint just coming straight out. You'll notice that some of the other poses, this joint will be in different locations, so that way you can get the pose to be different. But with the Chad, or the standing pose, I should say, I'm laughing because that's like been the code word for it like the whole time, so that I could remember which one was which. Because sometimes these change between pose A, pose B, C, D, or whatever code name they have. So it's just, that one's kind of stuck in my head. So let's do the arm attached first. And we'll make sure that when we plug it in, there's not going to be any issues. We can rotate it freely so that we can get it posed the way we want. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue on around the peg itself and maybe a little bit on top, so it'll keep it secure. I don't want to put too much, or when I go to plug it in, some could squeeze out, and that will not be cool. So we're going to have it twisted just slightly outward, I think, and we'll let it dry like this, and kind of hold that with one hand while that's getting ready. We're going to go ahead and take the left hand, and I think I'll kind of just have it just resting pretty much in line with the arm. A lot of our WarMechs are not humanoid at all, but with the Juggernaut, it was important that it was very humanoid, so I want the pose to feel human-like as well. So that way it kind of sells the idea of it being more human-like. If it was standing kind of in different ways, an alien or more more animalistic or something, might be what I want, but in this case I want it to look more humanoid and posed. And then we're going to go ahead and attach the scatter gun. Now with the scatter gun here, you're going to notice that there is a rail system on the top of it, and that's going to plug into the rail here on the arm. Now it doesn't plug in the sense that like it's going to be secured or anything when you're attaching it. You're just going to put some super glue and it's just going to hold it in place. So you can decide to either have it in the stored position, which will be basically with the rail all the way matching the front of the arm, or if I wanted to have my scatter gun extended and like in the firing position, it'll be the opposite. It'll basically be all the way forward, and then that's when it would aim the scatter gun and start firing it. But because I want this one to be kind of standing more imposing like and kind of just challenging someone to come at him, I want this to be stored and just kind of on standby. We'll just put a little bit of glue on there, line it up into the rail where I'm happy, and then just hold it in place until it dries. Now with that taken care of, the left arm is essentially ready to go. You could go ahead and glue the arm shield in. I'm going to just secure it so that way it's just in place so you can see the pose. But I would paint these separately because then that way you can really get underneath the arm and really make sure that it's not blocking the elbow or the scatter gun or the parts of the hand. That way you can get it all painted really nicely, and then you can always attach the shields after. That's what I do. Do whatever you feel most comfortable with. So we're gonna set the left arm aside. We're gonna bring back the Toad's Fall rotary cannon. Now that has a little bit more time to cure. We're gonna go ahead and attach it after we attach the arm here. You know what? We're actually gonna go ahead and do this first. We're gonna do, because I want it to have the right feel. And with the Toad's Fall cannon, the hand is going to plug in, and then there's a tiny little rail system on top of the rotary cannon that will line up with the rail here on the right arm. But when you get it, you want to kind of play with it a little bit. It's not, you'll notice that the rail is not on the bottom. It's kind of plugged forwards and a little bit at a diagonal angle. And myself, I don't even know if I even need glue for that. So I'm not going to glue that, but you certainly could. And then that way it'll give me options later if I want to take it apart when I'm painting. We'll go ahead and get the arm ready for the shoulder. And I'm gonna have this one posed a little bit more outward. I feel that that's kind of human, where it'll be angled at a different way instead of, it won't be so much by the side, it'll kind of be twisted out. Kind of let that dry. And it's the same situation as with the left arm. I would take the arm shield and I'm gonna plug it in now, but I would not glue that in until after you have painted. And you can see, at least with my print, it's very securely in there. It's not falling out. So I could play with it like this, you know, if I was okay with playing with a gray model, which I am, and you know, and game that way. And then afterwards, when I'm ready to paint, take it out, get it done, then put it back together. So in this case, I usually build the upper torso, then attach it to the lower torso, but to the lower half. But I'm actually gonna go ahead and put the torso in first because I wanna make sure that this right arm is gonna fit, because it's such a large weapon that I wanna make sure it's gonna fit next to the thigh where I want it to be. Because I don't want it to end up either, you know, rubbing up against the thigh, or it's so tight that it won't end up being attached. And then now I've got a real problem. I gotta either decide to break the legs apart or take off the shoulder and reposition things. I don't wanna do that. I want it to go together nice and easily as possible. So we're gonna go ahead and glue the bottom here, bottom of the model to the torso. I want to angle him slightly to the side. I think it looks a little bit more imposing. And now that the torso is dry, we're going to go ahead and glue on the left arm. And I think somewhere in this area looks good. So let's go ahead and get some paint here on the joint. Paint, some glue. My goodness, I'm thinking about painting. All right, now it's time for the right arm. Gonna put a little bit of glue on here. Bring this in, and I personally think that it would be more human for the rotary cannon to be kind of downwards rather than being forward. Typically, if we're holding something heavy as humans, we're going to naturally lower it at like a kind of a diagonal angle. We're not going to hold it straight out or aiming forward from our body unless we're purposefully doing that. So since I want this kind of in a more relaxed position, I feel that this pose is better. And I've elected to not having the rotary cannon resting against the thigh. That way, when I go to paint, I have plenty of room to kind of get around in there and do what I want, if I'm super picky or not when it comes time for that. And then all that is left now is the head. Now, if there was one piece that I for sure said, hey, I would paint this separate, then attach it, it would be the head. And the reason being, for myself, I like to make the skull mask of the Juggernaut have a white, like a worn white look to it. And I feel that if I put that into the neck socket It's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that without getting white anywhere else on the collar of the mech. So personally, I would keep this separate, but you don't have to. But before we do the head, or actually when we do the head, we have to kind of decide. So I want him kind of looking sort of like this, where he's a little bit off to the side. And I like to have the rear arc completely opposite of wherever the head is looking. So if I were to bring him down, and I know that the head's going to be that way, I want the eyes of the Juggernaut to be this way. So what I'll do, even though I'm not going to glue the head in yet, I'm going to kind of hold it in place. I'm going to put a little bit of glue here on the foot, and then that way I can remove this model later when I go to paint it, or when it's time to actually start basing it. But now that I have the head, I can kind of guide where I want the feet to be aimed. Yeah, like that. And then, because I know that I'm going to want the head to be aiming this way later, it'll be pretty close to where the rear arc is on the opposite side. All right, and now we have the Juggernaut completely assembled. So while it has 18 parts, it's, you know, one of our more complicated kits. Hopefully by watching this assembly video, you feel that it's a lot more doable and you kind of know where all the parts go. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below or contact us on Facebook or Discord or anywhere else that you can reach us. Because we do want to make sure that, you know, this is a big model and you do get it assembled correctly, because no one wants to glue the pelvis on backwards or something else like that, or have the, you know, the arm with the shields on the inside and it's all messed up. So just make sure you take your time, really plan out where you're going to put all the parts, and really take the time to really think about how you want it to be posed when he's all the way done. And I think by then he's going to end up being one of your standout pieces in your whole force. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you'd like to purchase one of these Juggernauts yourself, you can go and click the link in the description, or you can go to our web store. Thanks guys. Talk to you later. Bye.